Yeah, Tarkov's all about the CPU, we know that, but your GPU still decides how much eye candy you can turn on before your frames start to tank. So let's see, does the new 32GB 5090 really leave the 24GB 4090 behind? Or is it just flexing VRAM numbers? Stick around, you'll want to see this. Before we dive into the benchmarks, here's the rig powering these tests. If you want to see my full tune in detail, check out my tune video linked in the upper right corner. For the benchmarks, I use Streets of Tarkov and my standard test route, starting at Klimov Street and ending in front of Lexos. I ran 3 passes each at 1080, 1440, 4K, 4K with 2x sampling, and 4K with 4x sampling. Then I averaged the results for comparison. Alright, so let's talk about the results. 1080 offline is basically a tie, 5090 at 173 FPS, 4090 at 171 FPS average. The lows are almost identical, there's nothing noticeable in gameplay. In 1440 offline, we've got more of the same. 5090 edges out by less than 1%. Slightly better 1% lows, but it's still a wash, I'd say. In 4K offline, the 5090 pulls ahead just a little bit, average FPS up by about 2%. Minor improvement in lows, but we're still CPU limited here. Once we reach 4K with 2x sampling, things start to change. The 5090 jumps 51% higher in average FPS with big gains in lows, and the extra power of the 5090 really kicks in here. And at 4K 4x sampling, the 5090 dominates the 4090 with over 70% higher average FPS. This is essentially doing the work of rendering in 16K, and the 4090 just can't keep up here. Moving to the online tests, in 1080, there's a tiny edge for the 5090, less than a 1% higher average FPS, slightly better lows. Again, it's basically a wash, it's smooth on both cards. In 1440 online, the results mirror the offline tests. The 5090 is barely ahead, 0.7% higher average FPS and small gains in lows. In 4K online, again, I'd call it a wash. The 5090 has very slightly higher numbers with 2% higher average FPS and slightly higher numbers in lows. In 4K with 2x sampling online, the 5090 starts to flex again, 22% higher average FPS with gains in lows as well. In 4K 4x sampling online, the 5090 really shines, 63% higher average FPS and massive improvements in lows. This is true next level performance. So overall, up to 4K native, I'd call it a tie. We're really CPU limited, but once we move up to 4K with 2x or 4x sampling, that's where the 5090 starts to open up huge leads. Alright, now we're going to take a quick look at GPU usage and power draw. I didn't really bother showing 1080 and 1440 here because we're still CPU limited there. I started at 4K where we're beginning to approach and hit the GPU limits. So at 4K offline, the 5090 is cruising at just 54% usage while pulling 363 watts. That's compared to the 4090 sitting at 77% usage at 333 watts. So even in native 4K, the 5090 isn't really breaking a sweat, while the 4090 is working a bit harder here. Once we step up to 4K with 2x sampling, both cards are near full utilization. The 5090 hits 97% usage at 572 watts, while the 4090 is maxing out at 99% usage and 442 watts. This is where we start to see the 5090's higher power envelope being tapped into. At 4K 4x sampling, both GPUs are pegged at 100% utilization and we're GPU limited on both cards. The 5090 again is pulling an insane 577 watts, while the 4090 is capped at 448. Going online in native 4K where the CPU is even more limited, the 5090 is still coasting, just 46% usage at 318 watts. The 4090 meanwhile is at 67% usage at 294 watts. Again, the 5090 just showing it has tons of unused horsepower at this resolution. At 4K with 2x sampling online, the 5090 ramps up to 83% usage at 512 watts, while the 4090 is pretty much maxed at 98% usage and 441 watts. This is where the gap in efficiency and headroom starts to show. And finally, in 4K with 4x sampling online, both cards are fully tapped, 5090 at 98% usage and 575 watts, while the 4090 is at 99% and 447 watts. This really shows the difference between the two cards. And that's the 5090 versus 4090 in Tarkov. Like I said, up to 4K, the CPU is still the limit, so both cards crush it. But once you hit 4K with 2x and 4x sampling, the 5090 ramps up to its full power and starts to leave the 4090 behind. For 4K gaming, the 4090 is more than enough, but the 5090, it's pure overkill, next level power, and total bragging rights. And that's all I got for this one. If you enjoyed this quick comparison between these two flagships, smash that like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more benchmarks, PC tuning tips, and insane FPS tests. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.